is up, you guys, and welcome back to my channel. Before I get into any information, I want to say thank you to you guys who sat through my 2-hour video last week. I know that was really long, but it was definitely a case that sat heavy on my heart, being really local to the area, and having already covered a case very similar to that in North Carolina in general. You guys were just as upset and infuriated with how horribly the case was handled. You showed a lot of support to Brandon and Bree's family. A lot of donations were made, and I cannot thank you guys enough for the support that you show for these different victims and families that I speak about on my channel. You guys are just awesome. I really wouldn't be able to do anything that I'm currently doing on this channel without you guys supporting me. So now on to today's case, and this is one that I also really need your support on. There's like one podcast on this, no other coverage. There's very minimal coverage in the form of articles online, and I was reached out to by this young woman's sister to help get eyes on this case because it just hit the 10-year anniversary of the unsolved murder of 20-year-old Patricia Guardado, who went by the name of Paty, in Little Rock, Arkansas. This young woman vanished from the University of Little Rock, Arkansas, and I've even covered a handful of cases on my own where the same exact thing has happened to other individuals, and it has become like one of the most well-known cases. That's just not what happened in this case. But before I get into any more details of the case, I need to say a huge thank you to Audible for partnering with me on today's video. Audible is the leading provider for spoken word entertainment and my personal favorite way of consuming content. Audible has an outstanding selection of audiobooks, Audible originals. They've got podcasts, they have guided meditation, sleep tracks that I use all the time, and they have genres ranging in everything from true crime to history, psychology, art, self-help. They've got children's audiobooks, so there's something that fits everybody's taste. And it's also wildly convenient, which is probably the best thing about it in my opinion. You can listen to Audible anytime, anywhere. So if you need entertainment for a long car ride, or when you're at the gym, or when you're doing chores, Audible has you covered. My sister just recently recommended an audiobook for me called When We Believed in Mermaids by Barbara O'Neill, and I'm not quite finished with the audiobook yet, but oh my goodness, it's been a roller coaster of emotions so far. After losing her sister in an accident, a young woman named Kit went on to live her life without her built-in best friend. 15 years after her sister's unexpected death, live footage from another tragic accident all the way across the world showed someone that eerily looked like her sister. So Kit ends up on this huge mission to get to the truth and see if her sister really is still out there, why she believed her sister to be dead, and she ends up unearthing a ton of secrets in the process of this that totally changed her life. Props to my sister for giving me this great recommendation, and I wanted to pass it along to you guys. I highly recommend checking out that audiobook, but that is not something that sounds like your cup of tea. Audible members have many other options to choose from, including the all-new Plus catalog, which is thousands of select titles that are all just included in your membership. And on top of that, members also receive 1 credit every single month, good for any title at all in the premium selection. And all of the choices you make are your audiobooks to keep forever. If you're interested in checking out Audible, all you have to do is go to www.audible.com/Danielle or text Danielle to 500-500 to get 1 free audiobook, a 30-day free trial, and of course, access to the Plus catalog. Thank you again to Audible for partnering with me on today's video. They have supported this channel for years and the mission that I am on by helping me to donate the largest amounts possible that I can to these families, support their search efforts for their loved ones, or justice, like in this particular scenario. So as I said, Paty was 20 years old when she disappeared and ultimately was found murdered. And the short time that she spent on this earth, she made a huge impact to those that were around her. She was a dedicated person. Everything for her was all or nothing. You either give 100% or nothing else. She was so dedicated to church. Church was important to her. She was a very active member. She was also a very active member of her family. She grew up with lots of siblings, and she was like the little mom. She loved taking care of everybody, made sure that everyone had everything they needed, and that she set a really good example to those around her. When she began to work, she was an outstanding employee. You know, you could rely on her and that she would be responsible. And she also had a lot of dreams and goals. She wanted to go to college. She would have been the first generation going to college, and that was something huge to tackle, but she wanted to do it. She wanted a career. She wanted a family. She was very smart from the second she got into school on, and she ended up graduating from Joe T. Robinson High School in Little Rock, and then she went on to attend the University at Little Rock, Arkansas in the International Business Program. And as I said, she was first generation, so she was really kind of navigating this on her own, and it was important to her. She had been in a relationship, but a year prior to her disappearance, that relationship fizzled out, and she was beautiful. She had a great personality. She had a good head on her shoulders. So she was asked out by multiple men after that. But she would always say to her mom or her siblings that encouraged her to go on a date that she was focused on herself. She was focused on school. Everything else would come later. She was set to graduate in 2013 with hopes of graduating early. And she even had a job pretty much lined up for her once she was done. When she wasn't in school, she worked at Metropolitan Bank on McCain Boulevard in Little Rock. And she was such an amazing employee that her manager spoke to her and said, you know, when you graduate, I'm going to have a job for you here. We're going to get you a full-time, well-paid career at the bank, and it's just waiting for you. And her mom remembers how excited and proud she was when this was told to her, because she knew, and she told her mom, that so many people go to college and they work so hard, but once they are done, they still can't get a job. And so knowing that she was going through all of this and experiencing this and had everything ready for her when she was done was amazing. She did have really close friends. She never hung out in a bad crowd. She was just a good, calm, very straightforward young woman, very caring. She was very willing to help others. And she had a really good relationship with her mom. Her mom said that Paty was the kind of young woman that you could always trust. She was so responsible. You always knew she was going to make the right decision. She had a really open line of communication with her mom. They had a really good bond. And so her mom always knew if something was going on, no matter what it was, Paty would come to her and talk to her about it. And she always knew where Paty was. She always knew when Paty was going to call. You didn't have to kind of stay on her to behave. She was just a good young woman. On Wednesday, October 12th, 2011, it was your typical school day at the household. Paty's mom took her car to take her younger siblings to school. They lived in Alexander or near Alexander, and she had to take them to downtown Little Rock. They went to St. Edward's Catholic Church near MacArthur Park. And so this was something that she did pretty much every single day. And she got back home at around 8:30 in the morning. And this was around the time that Paty was usually leaving for her 9 a.m. class. So they had already had this all planned and scheduled out and were in a routine. And when she got there, Paty was already dressed. She was dressed really nice that day because she had a shift at the bank after she finished up with her classes. Mom noticed that she was running a little bit behind, and so she offered to make her lunch. Paty said, no, I don't have time for that, and then went to head to school. But Paty's mom remembers just kind of looking at her that morning before she left. She was ready to take on the world. Her mom just smiled at her, told her that she looked beautiful. They told each other they loved each other, and out the door Paty went at about 8:45 in the morning. Now, typically Paty went to her classes, and then after she was done with school, she would call her mom on her way to her shift at work. And I believe that day she was supposed to get off at around 6 p.m. But for some reason that day, Paty never called her mom after school. And when I'm telling you Paty was like clockwork, the fact that she didn't call her mom was the first red flag and the only red flag her mom needed. Around 6 p.m. when Paty was supposed to be off work and still had not reached out to her mom began to panic. The only place that Paty would go after work was the family store. The shop was called El Paisano, and typically the whole family ended up being there throughout the day. And so sometimes Paty would stop by to say hi to everyone before heading home for dinner. So because of this, Paty's mom called into the store to see if Paty had been there, but she had not. So at this point, she decides to call Paty's cousin, because Paty's cousin also went to UALR and they actually had the same 9 o'clock class. According to this cousin, Paty had never shown up to class that day either, meaning that sometime between 8:45 and 9 o'clock, something happened to Paty. Paty's family began to call her repeatedly, but every time they called, her phone went straight to voicemail, and they knew that something was wrong. Right away, Paty's brother started to call Little Rock Police Department, other surrounding agencies, to see if maybe there had been some sort of accident, because this was so out of character and abnormal that they thought the only thing to explain this was that she got in a car accident and didn't have her phone or belongings or anything. It was in the hospital. There was no record at all that Paty had been in any sort of accident, so they were pretty much back at square one. At this point, her mom had had enough. She decided to throw Paty's sisters in the car and they went off to go and look for her themselves. It was around 7 p.m. at this point. She had already missed their usual dinner time. They went and headed towards UALR to check the parking lots and see if Paty was still there for some reason. They drove around the campus and there was nothing, but they ended up going to another parking lot, which is off of University Drive, I believe South University Drive, which is on the western side of campus. This particular area was not an actual school parking lot. It was just a place where a lot of people would go to park, because it was, I believe, like 200 parking spaces, and it was behind a Burger King and like shopping strip. It was the Mexican consulate, and it was a very fast walk to school. And when they went into this parking lot, her sisters immediately pointed out her burgundy Scion. Right away, Paty's mom pulled up right behind her car and noticed that Paty was not in it. The car was empty. Now, it was not parked haphazardly. It wasn't like dropped and like someone ran from it. It looked just like someone had parked there. Like Paty had showed up to school that day, parked her car, and left. Her book bag with her textbooks wasn't in there. Her purse wasn't in there. Her glasses weren't in there. Her phone wasn't in there. All of that stuff seemed to be gone. So now it just seemed like she made it to school, but on the walk over to school, something happened. And you'll be able to see from the photos that I put up of Google Maps, it is quite literally a walk across the main university drive, and then you're on the school campus. Immediately upon finding her car with no sign of Paty at all over the parking lot, her mom reported her missing to the Little Rock Police Department. Now, I have seen from some sources that police originally told her to wait 48 hours, that you had to wait 48 hours before putting in a missing persons report. However, for those of you who maybe have not heard me say this before, and just to reiterate for the millionth time, that is not a thing. I don't know why police departments still say you need to wait 48 hours. That is not legally true. The second you want to file someone is missing, you are allowed to file someone is missing. If you're told that, point this out and keep pushing to file them as missing. But she basically told authorities, look, this is not like Paty. She's never done this before. Something is going on. Now, I want to point out that from the start of this investigation, things were difficult. Paty's mom did not speak English. A lot of her family does not speak English. So communication was not exactly the easiest when reporting Paty as missing and trying to figure everything out because of that. I'm not sure when exactly, but I do know that Paty's car did end up being taken in for processing. And I know that authorities also tried to track her cell phone to figure out if they could find her location through that. But somehow it seemed to turn up nothing. I don't even know if they managed to get a last ping on her phone or anything like that, because they have not released that information. They've actually not released anything, which I'll get to in a little bit. But pretty much right off the bat, Paty's family realized they were going to have to do a lot of this on their own. The police didn't seem to be taking it very seriously. There was this communication issue, this barrier. So by that following day, that Thursday, they decided to meet up in the Burger King parking lot, that parking lot right behind, to start their own search. While their search was ongoing, a few different media outlets had picked up Paty's case. Not that many, which I do want to point out, it's very frustrating to see that, because we've gone through plenty of cases just on my channel alone of young women that have gone missing from school parking lots or universities or something like that, and it's ended up like national coverage. So It's really disheartening to see that Paty's case was not treated the same way. Few places even wanted to really speak about it. And unfortunately as well, police weren't really out that day, from my understanding either, to search for Paty. And since no one knew about it, no one else really came to help either. There was one person who was an absolute angel, and her name is Carissa. And Carissa was a student from the school, and she just so happened to hear about what happened in the parking lot that day, because she was actually in the parking lot at the same time Paty would have been that same exact morning. And she saw that no one was out there, that it was the family searching that morning, as well as a few different church members from St. Andrews. But that was it. There weren't other students. There really was nobody. So she decided to dedicate her time to helping Paty's family any way that she could. So she started to reach out to different students at the school. She organized a lot of different searches by utilizing social media, and she kind of took charge of getting student body action. And she also started reaching out to multiple news sources to try to encourage them to speak about Paty, say something, because at this point in time, someone had to have seen something. Someone had to have some sort of information, and they were really relying on that so someone would come forward. There's this very sensitive time period after someone goes missing where you have to find as much as you possibly can. And they were really pushing to get information since authorities did not seem to be out searching themselves. They tried to get different news stations as well to come out to where the searches were being held, but it seemed like not many people were really taking the bait. According to quotes from the family, everyone was slow to react. That is the same phrase that was used over and over again by family and volunteers and friends. Everyone was slow to react. The police department, the news station, the school, everybody. Now, the family at first believed that maybe authorities were just too busy looking for Paty. They kind of wrote it off as, they're not involved with our searches because they're holding their own. And every time the family would call to speak to police, the family would say, well, they're not calling us back because they're busy looking for Paty. But unfortunately, after a while, they really came to the conclusion that authorities were not doing a whole lot. It was really devastating because her family would call over and over again trying to say, this is abnormal. This is not like Paty. Like, please don't give up on her. There's something going on. There has to be more than this, like a crime or something has to be involved. And authorities just plain didn't answer and then didn't call the family back to let them know anything. So they really were on their own. By Friday, searches were still being held. I know that members of the church, as well as Paty's family, had printed off numerous flyers. Flyers were being put up around the school, around the surrounding businesses. They were being handed out to individuals to try to encourage people with information to possibly come forward. And also that night, that Friday night, there was a vigil that was held. And honestly, no one really thought anyone was going to come because no one was talking about this disappearance. Carissa was shocked at the lack of students that seemed to be aware of it and were helping. And of course, the news really wasn't talking about it. But between all of their efforts, by that night, I think 200 to 300 individuals ended up showing up to the vigil, something that nobody was expected. But this blew everyone away because I can't imagine what those first few days felt like, how alone they felt using the few people that they had to try to search for someone in such a large space. And then to finally feel like you're being heard and that other people care was massive to them. The vigil was held by different people from St. Andrew's Church as well. And what was really awesome about this is the fact that for the past 20 years, they were really familiar with holding two separate masses, one that was English and then one that was in Spanish. So they were actually able to use this to their benefit at this point in time by kind of holding this vigil and speaking to everyone and raising awareness in two separate languages so that everyone was able to participate and everyone was able to understand. Searches continued that Saturday and Sunday, but by Sunday morning, Paty's mom ended up receiving a phone call from Little Rock Police Department. So Little Rock PD informed Paty's mom that remains had been found in a lake in Sweet Home, which is an area outside of Little Rock by fishermen. So I guess these fishermen had gone to this lake. It's quite literally just a few hundred yards away from Highway 365, only about a 25-minute drive from. And these fishermen wanted to scope it out for fishing purposes. And there was a gate that was open. And so they walked into the gate, approached the water, and ended up finding a body near the shore and just a few feet of water. So authorities came out to the scene. So at this point, they told her mom they weren't sure yet. They wanted to wait to have her identified. They wanted to wait for DNA testing and different things like that. So they wanted to come to the house to get Paty's toothbrush and hairbrush for those purposes. Paty's mom said she could not believe that her daughter somehow ended up in a body of water 25 minutes away. So she gave these things to authorities and continued her search efforts. Even if this ended up being her daughter, she wanted to know that she had gone out and done everything she could while she had the time to do it. She wasn't going to sit down silently and wait. And so that's exactly what they did all day Sunday. They had a search until about 2 a.m. into Monday morning. Now, by Monday morning, they were all organizing together again to do another search in the Burger King parking lot. And at this point, Paty's mom receives another phone call from Little Rock PD. I think initially they had told her they possibly wanted her to come and identify the body, but so she was expecting to possibly have to go in and do this. But they said at this point they just wanted to have a meeting with her that day at noon at the family store. At the same time, they called Father Tyler, who was from the church, and he had been very active throughout this entire time, and told him, we want to meet with you as well, just not at the family restaurant, somewhere else. So the first person authorities met with was Father Tyler, and they basically confirmed to him just what everyone pretty much already assumed, that the remains that were found in this lake in Sweet Home, this small town of only 850 people in what used to be a rock quarry, were in fact the remains of Patricia. The detective asked Father Tyler, "Do you want to be the one to tell the family?" And Father Tyler said, "Well, do you know Spanish?" Because these people don't need to hear this translated. They need to be able to speak to someone face to face about this news, about this information. They need to all hear it at the same time. And the detective said, "No, I can't speak Spanish." So Father Tyler agreed to tell the family so they could hear it together all at once. By the time they made it to the family store, there were dozens of people there, all pretty much immediately knew what was about to be said. They were screaming and crying and upset, saying, "Tell us it's not true." And so they ended up having to send everyone away except for the family, and Father Tyler informed them that the remains were in fact Paty's. This was devastating, and everyone had so many questions, but unfortunately, here we are 10 years later, and not a single one of those questions has been answered. Paty's remains had been sent off to the Arkansas State Crime Lab for an autopsy, and the case was switched to a homicide investigation. But one huge downfall once it switched to this is that out of the 9 detectives that were in Little Rock Police Department, not a single one of them spoke Spanish. So they ended up having to bring in someone as a translator. And I really want you guys to kind of just sit and think about that for a second. Imagine how hard it would be to know that your loved one went missing, then was found killed, and you can't even have a fluid conversation with the people that are trying to fight for answers. Obviously, translation is amazing. I'm glad that those services exist. I'm glad that there are people that are willing to do that. I could not ever imagine, that feeling of frustration and not being able to ask the questions directly to the person you want to speak to. And when things pop up in your head, it's not as easy as just a phone call or a text. Someone else has to get involved, and it requires waiting. It's already such a difficult time, even if you do speak the same language. We see how communication sucks half the time when that is the case. And so I cannot imagine what her family went through at this point. Her family has stated that they believe a lot of the reason why this case moved so slow and nothing really happened was partially because of the language barrier. So at this point, it had been switched to a homicide investigation, as I stated, and I think that this is essentially when authorities really started to move on the case. I don't believe any questioning of anyone or investigation was done at all up until this point, which is really, really heartbreaking. But basically, authorities immediately had sent that car in for testing, could not locate a ping on her phone. We already know that. And they also began to look in the area for surveillance footage that may have captured what happened, because at this point, they believed it's possible she was the one who parked her car here. It looked as if she had taken all of her belongings out to go to school, meaning something happened to her in the parking lot. They were able to get in touch with the university, and the university was able to look at their surveillance, and the whole main road right there across from this parking lot, every way you can pretty much get out of this parking lot is facing towards the university, the campus. So there's surveillance all there, and not a single one of the cameras ever picked her up on the other side of the road or crossing over, meaning that she never left this parking lot. But unfortunately, despite the fact that the Mexican consulate is in this parking lot, a Burger King, multiple other businesses, this is a main road that apparently gets 35,000 cars in traffic a day at 9 a.m., part of rush hour. Somehow, nobody had surveillance that captured anything. And actually, this entire parking lot that had 200 spaces was entirely unmonitored. When you have someone that very cut and dry, pretty much vanished straight out of a parking lot, your one saving grace would be surveillance. And knowing they didn't have it was just a huge blow. So at this point, authorities decided to go ahead and start making rounds and speaking to people at local businesses. People were parking there to go to school that morning. They were speaking to people who would frequently do that. Did they see anything? They spoke to all these businesses and people that would have been going in for the morning at this time. Did they see anything? And somehow, despite questioning everyone possible, they weren't able to get any answers. No one claimed to have seen anything that day. Paty's family told authorities that the only thing they could really think of off the top of their head is that she had been in a relationship with someone a year prior. And just a week and a half before the 12th of October, this ex-boyfriend of hers had been trying to get in contact with her. So authorities did state they went to track him down. They did confirm they managed to find this ex-boyfriend, but they didn't say a single thing about if he was ruled out or not. And the reason why this is super suspicious is because there didn't seem to be any evidence at all in the parking lot of any sort of struggle. It's possible that she got into a car with someone that she knew, that she was familiar with, and maybe they drove out of the parking lot with her in the car, and that's why nobody saw her walk across the main road. So maybe her ex-boyfriend tried to reach her. Did this ex-boyfriend maybe meet her in the parking lot to talk to her or something? And maybe she said she didn't want him back, or something of the sort happened and one thing led to another. But again, authorities have not stated and refused to state if he was ever ruled out or not. Other than that, they weren't able to find pretty much anything. I don't know if there was a ping on her phone. I don't know if authorities checked to see if she was texting anyone that day. Was she planning on meeting someone like the ex-boyfriend? None of that information was handed to the family. No one knows for sure if any of her belongings were found inside of the car or if they were with her. No one knows if any of those belongings have ever been found. Everything was just kind of up in the air, and authorities said they were investigating this, but it was really frustrating. When the autopsy was finished, ultimately, they also would not tell the family the cause of death, manner of death, anything like that. And they said this was all to protect the integrity of the investigation. And Paty's mom said she did not at all want to jeopardize anything. Hard as it was to know she couldn't have answers, she didn't want to harm the investigation, and she completely understood. However, I don't know if they still feel the same now that it's been 10 years and still no information has been released, and there's also been absolutely no progress in the case. After the news broke that Paty's remains had been found, this is really when the student body and just the school itself started to act. There was a vigil that was held, and over 300 students, staff, and university officials attended this vigil, said that they were experiencing this loss alongside the family. And while they were definitely reacting and paying their respects to Paty's family and Paty herself, many students came forward after this saying that they were worried about their safety and that they really believed that the university's safety protocol needed to be re-examined. Now, the school came forward and stated that they knew students were parking in this lot behind Burger King. Students also would frequently park just on the side of neighborhood roads in the area, but they said that they strongly discouraged students from doing this because they could not send any of their officers to these areas. It's private property. It's outside of their school jurisdiction. So they asked students to not do this. In the same breath, they only had 5,300 parking spots on a campus that had over 13,000 students, and that doesn't account for staff that also had to park there. And obviously you can do the math, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And this school in particular is a heavy commuter school, meaning that people drive to the school more than anything else, yet still they only have 5,000 parking spots for 13,000 plus people. A lot of students came forward as well saying it was $165 to get a reserved spot, and there were only a few reserved spots anyways. A lot of people couldn't afford that, and even if they could, these spots were taken so quickly that people pretty much didn't even have a shot at it. A lot of other students complained that the parking the school did have required a 15 to 20 minute walk to class, at least for a lot of them. The parking lots, from what I've seen on Google Maps, are mainly on the north and eastern side of the school. So anyone who had classes to the south and west of the school had a good 20+ minute walk ahead of them from any of these parking lots. And a lot of people said that unless you even arrived at these parking lots an hour plus before any classes started, you weren't getting them. So these students were basically forced to go to places like this Burger King back parking lot or the sides of streets and communities, because first of all, it was the only place left to park, and second of all, it was not a 20-minute walk to get to their classes on the western side of campus. So while the school was really trying to say they discouraged it and we're doing all they could, students didn't necessarily agree because they basically were being told, okay, either you don't make it to class because we don't have enough parking spots, or park somewhere else and put yourself in a dangerous position, which is a very unfair thing. But this also brought up a lot of questions when it came to how on earth Paty could have vanished from this small area and it go completely undetected. As you look at the photo again of this area, you have a main road that I said has at least 35,000 cars travel it a day. She disappeared around 9 o'clock from this location. There's a main shopping center there, school surveillance all on the other side of the road, and then a neighborhood in the back. And there's definitely a few different cul-de-sacs that someone could have parked at with easy access to that parking lot, and maybe someone could have snatched her that way. But again, a lot of people were leaving for work or school at this time in these neighborhoods, so I think that probably would have put off a red flag. And on top of that, despite the fact that there is no security patrolling these areas because they're off school campus, it also falls in between 4 different patrol districts. So there's 4 different patrol districts that are usually in that location. It's right on the border of a 5th. So the police department said that usually there's about 5 or 6 different officers in that area at all times because all of those different districts converge right there. So we've got all this police activity, all of this student activity, all of this business activity, all of this neighborhood, and somehow she still vanished without being seen. It's absolutely mind-blowing. And her mom started to go personally every Wednesday morning at the same time that Paty would go to try to rewalk her footsteps, basically, to figure out what she was doing that morning and what it was like. And she would do this and watch all of these students busy in the parking lot. All parking spots would be filled up. People would be walking to class, people going to work at these different restaurants and businesses. And she said she could not figure out how in the actual hell nobody saw a thing. It makes absolutely no sense, but to me, really makes me feel like it's because there was no fight. There was no struggle. I think it's very possible she got in the car with somebody that she knew. There was also a funeral that was held for Paty, and at this point, so many people had heard about her case that they couldn't even shut the doors at the church. People were just overflowing down the stairs and into the road and around the building because so many people saw this beautiful, young, intelligent woman with so many things she had accomplished and planned on accomplishing, and were devastated that her life was taken this soon and wanted to show this family as much support as possible. Divers ended up being sent down to the quarry to see if maybe there was some evidence that was left in the water. I don't know if they found anything. Again, authorities have not released a single detail about this case at all. But from what I'm just gathering, the location that they said it was a couple hundred yards away from Highway 365. And if you look at the picture, someone would have had to have pulled over on like the side of this highway in order to dump a body. And I feel like someone probably wouldn't do that in broad daylight. So that brought forward this question of how long until Paty was put in the water? Was she killed first and then put in the water? Did it happen the day she was taken? Was it a couple of days? I mean, there's 4 days that are not accounted for before her remains were found that Monday. So all of these questions were just going and spinning in circles, but no one could seem to answer them. There's just not really many other ways to access this area. And also, this quarry is kind of in a random spot. It's 25 minutes away from campus. This town only has a population of 850 people. I don't know if this was a place a lot of people would frequent, but clearly whoever took her and put her in this position had this well thought out. Little Rock Police Department came forward and made a statement saying that they had chased every lead possible, but it really wasn't taking them anywhere. They interviewed everyone they could possibly interview, and they said that the entire investigation was very slow from the start because there wasn't really much to go off of. Finding evidence of what happened seemed to be near impossible. But then about a month later, they had what they believed could be the first break in the case. On November 20th, 2011, not even 2 miles away from the location that Paty disappeared, a woman called in to report that she had been attacked by 2 Hispanic men. So she said it was around 8 p.m. and she left the theater that night and was walking to her car when one Hispanic man approached her and grabbed her. She managed to fight out of his grasp and ran towards a nearby car, crawling underneath of it to try to keep herself safe. As she was doing this, a second Hispanic man got out of a nearby car and tried to use a stun gun on her. But at this point, she had made such a commotion that bystanders ended up hearing her and ran to her aid. And when they did, these 2 individuals got in the car and fled. Now, one of them they were able to identify as Salvador Carrillo, and he was charged as one of the men involved in this incident, but I have not been able to find pretty much anything at all about this. I've only seen his name mentioned in one article about specifically Paty's disappearance. I couldn't find anything related to this specific crime. I don't know if the second man was ever found. All I know is that police thought, maybe this is exactly what happened to Paty. Since Paty was taken and no trace was left behind, and then she was placed in an area that just by chance she happened to be found, it seemed decently thought out. So when it came to this other woman, literally only a month later, not that far away, this obviously was planned as well because you had 2 different individuals playing different parts to try to get to this woman. Maybe the same exact thing happened to Paty, and maybe no evidence was left behind because they lured her in. She was a very kind person, was always willing to help. If someone was able to say, I need help with this, something happened, will you come and help me? She likely would have tried to help somebody and very easily could have been stun gunned and then put into the car, and no one really would have noticed much of anything. I do know that police came forward and said that Salvador Carrillo was wanted for questioning in regards to Paty's case, but I don't know if they ever questioned him. I don't know anything more past that point, just that was the only named individual that was ever really brought up during this whole entire investigation. From this point on, things continue to just be very, very slow. Not much seemed to happen. Her family kept searching and the church kept helping as much as they could. St. Edward's actually helped to put up large billboards all around the town to try to make sure as much people as possible saw her face in case they saw her in the car with someone or maybe noticed something strange. If she had been held captive for those couple of days, it's very likely that someone may have seen her. Did someone see her being transported? Just anything at all. Paty's mom continued to make rounds around town. She would check in on all of the flyers. If any of them were damaged or torn down, she would replace them with new flyers. She would frequently speak to the detectives in the case as well as go down to the police department, basically begging them to not forget about the case. She said, and I quote, "Please don't forget about our case just because we're Hispanics. Please keep remembering this case. Please, please don't abandon it." She was so scared that because there was this communication barrier and because she was Hispanic and her daughter was Hispanic, that people would just turn a blind eye, that no one was going to remember it, that there wouldn't be this effort in there. So she made sure that she said something as frequently as possible so she wasn't forgotten. As time passed, Paty's sisters grew up, and her younger sister, Gloria, that was 11 years old at the time, is actually the one that reached out to me to cover this case. And she says that every single October, they're reminded that Paty was taken from them. And while that's devastating, it also helps to renew this fire and them to bring whoever killed her to justice, to keep searching for that individual that's out there. She said, and I quote, "It's not fair that someone gets to live their life. Someone gets to move on, and we don't. This person could be living without thinking about it, but we think about it every single day." Nobody in her family can believe that after this long, there has not been anyone arrested or, even remotely looked into that they know of in the death of Paty. It just seems like she vanished in thin air in the middle of this parking lot and that this was a perfect murder, but they've said they know that doesn't exist, that someone out there knows something and they're just not coming forward and saying anything about it. Little Rock Police Department has come forward and they've said they've brought in the sheriff's department, they brought in the FBI at some point, but none of that ever got them any closer to the killer. They've also stated they are actively looking into the case, and at one point they said they had multiple persons of interest, that they just had to ensure that the evidence they had supported the investigation, but I'm honestly not really sure what they meant by that. And those several persons of interest, I don't know who they could be. The family's never been told about them, and it's been 10 years, so I'm assuming none of that panned out. But I think the largest issue personally for me is not just the fact that it has been 10 years and this case remains unsolved, but that it's been 10 years and still authorities will not release a single thing. From my understanding, her family still has no idea how she died, no idea her cause of death. And I completely understand the initial thought process and, line of thinking of we want to keep things tight to the vest to protect the integrity of this investigation. But when it's been a decade, something has got to give. Something has got to give. And I'm not saying release everything to the public. Everyone always loses their minds in the comment section when I say this. Like, you don't have to know everything. You don't deserve to have answers just because we're curious. That's not at all what I'm saying when I suggest that the police release more information. I'm not saying it because I'm curious and I just want to know. I say that because there are ways that that information may lead the public to have an aha moment. Let's say, for instance, they found that her phone last pinged in this specific location. And when no one knows that, and they're like, I think I saw someone that looked like that, but they didn't say that she was at that location, she was at this parking lot, I won't report it. But if that information's put out there, maybe they could say, oh my God, I remember seeing someone like that. I need to report this to police. There are certain things that after a decade you need to release because obviously that sort of help is needed. The public may have answers and may have a way to help. And when you're this far into a case, you need to try something different. Clearly, whatever they're doing is not leading them any closer to answers. Authorities won't say how long she was in the water. They won't say when they believe she was put in the water. That makes me question if any of the individuals living in that area You know, they obviously, if they're not going to tell family, they're not going to ask these people in the area, hey, on this day and time, did you see anything? So did they ever ask anyone in the neighborhoods around the Rock Quarry if they saw a random car parked on the side of the road? If they're not going to give up that time, how are they ever going to get the information that could help them solve this case? Because of the fact that this person likely would have to pull over on the side of the highway, I consider that pretty crucial information. If they don't have that timeline, fine. But if there is that information, I feel like it probably should be out there. Same thing goes for her phone. Where did it last ping? Did she have any conversations that morning? Who may she have been speaking to? Was she supposed to meet with someone that day? You know, any of those little things to help people figure out if they maybe saw something that morning. All I know is that when I look at this case as a whole, I feel like this was something someone had done before, or they went on to continue doing it. And if that's the case, there could be other crimes connected. For instance, the one attempted kidnapping a month later. Were those people involved? Did they think they got away with it with Paty, so they went on to take somebody else? I know this wasn't a situation of trafficking. Her body was found in this quarry. I think this was either someone that she knew that came and got her quietly and drove off, and something bad happened and they disposed of her. Or I think this is a situation where someone had bad intentions, like sexual assault or something like that. They came and waited in a parking lot, and she just so happened to arrive late, and that basically made her the perfect victim for them. I just hate to see the way that this case went, and I honestly think it is a solvable case. It just requires time and dedication and really letting some of those details out so the public can be of assistance. We've seen how that has helped cases before. There is a recent interview, it's mostly in Spanish, that's going to be linked down below. And they are just desperate. They want answers. They don't want anyone to forget. And that's why I felt it was so important to get this case out there. I want people to know Paty's story. I want people to know from that area that people are still talking about it. People are still thinking about her. And hopefully this will stir something up. The one good thing about 10 years passing is that people have changed. Someone that maybe was trying to protect someone could want to come forward at this point. They could have something eating away at them that makes them want to finally say something, and hearing something like this or seeing people push more and more and more may get them to make that decision. And there's a $10,000 reward out there leading to any information on Paty's murder, and I honestly hope this family eventually gets answers. I'm heartbroken for them. There's so many people that are missing this young woman, and she had such a huge life ahead of her, and whoever did this to her took away such a beautiful soul that would have contributed so much more to the world than this person probably ever has. If I ever find a GoFundMe that you guys can donate to help maybe push for more billboards or, you know, something of the sort, maybe a PI, I will make sure to let you guys know. Same thing if there's ever a petition or anything, I will hopefully, if any of that comes up, put it in the pinned comment down below. But other than that, I just want to thank you for your support on this channel and the time that you guys take out of your day and out of your life to just care about somebody else. While everyone looks at that number of views on videos as, oh wow, this person gets this many views, that's awesome. Or, you know, they must be popular, this video must be popular. What I see when I see that number and what these families see is the amount of people willing to stop and take time for someone other than themselves. People that maybe have never gotten coverage on their loved one, people that are worried that everyone is forgetting their loved one's name, are looking at their number and seeing, wow, 200,000 people have heard her story. 200,000 people have seen their face. And that is so wildly important, you guys. It is so important. So I just wanted to reiterate for the millionth time ever on my channel that you guys mean so much, and your views mean so much. Your support means so much, not just to me, but to these families. You are helping keep these people out there, their story heard, and these families feeling like they have not been forgotten. On that note, I'm going to go ahead and go, you guys. Thank you so much for listening to Paty's story. Make sure you share it far and wide. This video, I also have a good article linked down below. There is a Reddit thread that you can share as well that I have linked down below. Make sure you get her picture out there, her story out there, and hopefully encourage someone to come forward with information. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit the subscribe button down below to become a part of the Howlin' fam so that we can hopefully bring them home together or bring them justice together. And I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.